Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Sam Irvin here for another mix demo. This is episode 2 of Asheville Notes Sun Goblin, their song Pint of Sacrifice. I'm just getting started here. You know, one of the big challenges of any creative project is to start. Um, and just getting through the holidays, Christmas, New Year's, etc. Sunday before I go back to teaching music lessons. And I am getting back in the flow of this mix, remembering what I'm doing here. And I have finished up stage 1. Typically, I try to comp all the takes, make sure that I'm using the various takes that I want here, getting some basic balancing and panning. That's kind of it for step 1. And I just barely started phase 2, which is to run each source into my analog gear here so we can A/B what that's like for the kick drum and the snare. But first, let's just get a taste of what the music sounds like. All right, you get the feel of the song. This is like a folk rock project. Pretty simple layout with the instrumentation. We got drums, bass, acoustic guitar, electric guitar, and the vocals. Relatively simple setup there. Some things that come to mind first, just listening to that, is that the low end is pretty non-existent or weak. I actually was curious when I started working on it, like, is my subwoofer on right now? So, of course, one of the first things to do with that kick drum is to fatten up the sub. I really like to get the kick happening down there 40 or below and have the bass fill in around 40, kick drum at 75, more bass at 100 plus. So, sculpting that interlocking EQ is one of the first things to get straight here. Another thing that I notice is that the guitar is quite reverbed out. Let's listen to just the guitar. Kind of sounds like it's in outer space, you know. I do have the dry signal, so maybe I can do something with that. The DI has his reverb on it. I got this 57 on the amp. Curious what I probably sent it through the API, and it does seem to be peaking a little bit. Which, you know, a little bit of crunch from the API, sometimes nice, but in this case, I'm not liking it. So it's pretty low in this guitar bus mix. Although the ribbon mic on the amp sounds really great. That's pretty clear. And we have this room mic a little farther away, and a stairwell mic super far away. So with the room mic and the stairwell mic, I'm adding even more natural reverb to his already affected reverb, and it's just getting a little out there, if you ask me. So that'll be important for me to clean up. It could just end up sounding like that cowboy or beach guitar sort of spring reverb vibe, which is okay. I think one of the things that I could do to fix it is to have the rest of the band a little bit more in some sort of space. So add a reverb, a room reverb to the rest of the band, so that it sounds more cohesive. They have a really nice organic sound. The drums are sounding quite nice without me doing much to him. Kev is a great player, and some of his riffs, some of his like fills are kind of not quite perfect. That's a good example of like a little bit of push-pull there with the rhythm. I like it. You can tell that they're a real band. They play together often. So I'm not going to do anything to make it perfect, like auto-tune the voice. I think Rory's got a really nice voice on her own, especially once it gets processed and sits in the mix better. That'll be good. So let's go through one by one and hear everything. So we've got the drums. We've got the bass. Electric guitar, we've already talked about. We have this acoustic. There's some chords and the voice.
Still naked and basking when the cold front came in.
Love it. Let's build it out one by one. Drums, bass, guitar, acoustic. And voice.
Oh, the involuntary shiver.
I love that little moment right there. James got this nice shiver sound in his guitar sweetening. Wow. There's a whammy bar there. All right, not a whole lot to talk about. Plus, I want these to be a little shorter. So hopefully that's nice and informative. Let's get this other mix window up here and see if there's anything else to talk about, right? So we've got the drums set up, 13 or so mics like usual. We have the bass. Now, Dan wanted to use this bass simulator, but it was quite noisy. So, sorry, Dan, we're using the Rupert Neve DI, RNDI. I already talked about the electric guitar setup. Now, there are some background guitars. Let's see if I can find those. I got this nice mouse. All the scrolling you're seeing is now on this productivity mouse, this MX Master 4. And it's got like a horizontal scroll wheel. So here are a couple of those electric guitar backups. So I really wanted to get, I liked both of these parts. This is like a lower part of the chord. Really loved what he made happen there. But the end of the solo is this higher part. So together they sound really nice. And it's nice and subtle, I think, so you don't really understand what's going on when you're listening to it. The second one is going to be harder to fit in, I believe. It's this really nice pattern. It's in a funky polyrhythm. I don't know if I'd call it a polyrhythm. It feels like a polyrhythm. Syncopation, maybe. And I'll need to fit that in over this guitar part, which is in a similar range, unfortunately, so I don't know how to differentiate them. So you can see already they're sounding very similar. They're hard to pull apart, so I'll let you listen to this main one. That's nice. They're both really nice. So if possible, I want to be able to use them.
The sun was still shining, your golden beams with the rain drifting in.
Yeah, I think, Michael O'Shea, my buddy, who engineered my album, mastered it at least, and very knowledgeable guy, said that so much of a mix or music in general is just impression, right? You're just trying to make an impression of something happening, hint at it, and that's enough. And that's definitely what's happening with this guitar part. You're like, oh, there's something extra happening, but you don't need to know exactly what it is. There is the end of the song. We recorded this acoustic part separately. Here we are.
Always death in exchange for life.
Nice finger
Always
picking.
pint of sacrifice. I am holding up with my heart and holding our moments tight.
Whew. That low bass there at the end does it for me. Very sweet. That bass part took a few takes to get because this last part's a little rubato without a click track or a tempo or anything like that. We recorded it separately to get this harmonic nice and nice and clean,
Always death in
which I think we succeeded. All right, yeah, that's about all to look at the moment. I wonder if I should have shown all of these various parts before they're mixed or not, but hopefully you'll see in part 2 in just a moment that everything sounds thicker. Oh yeah, that's another thing that I wanted to do here. So here is the kick drum. Wimpy kick. This is, we have 2 mics on the kick drum, one in front and one on the beater. The front giving us more of a thump. I've got a gate on it at the moment, so that's helping out. The beater, just these little, these little pops. And together we get a nice attack, but it's even nicer when we get thickness. So this is post analog chain. Yeah, that's great. Here's a part that I'm gonna have to edit out. Hey. It's snowing, everybody. I think you got a good idea of the empowered kick there. And now let's go over to the snare. So this is tougher. I feel as though Kev tuned down the snare. The top of the snare again, we're going through the API, so getting some crunch in there on purpose, but maybe overdid it just a hair. I'll admit it. Then we've got the bottom of the snare, right, which is just more of the actual snare chains under the drum. And so I actually made those a little louder and more primary than the top. The top sounds floppy to me, I think. So this might need a little bit more work. It's got a little bit of verb on it too when I switch over to the processed version here. Here we go. This is it without the verb. All right, so hopefully you can hear that that's hitting a little harder. All right, so now we'll hear the drums, just the drums, with the unprocessed kick, and then we'll switch. nice. It's a lot nicer. So that is only through the 8803 Neve EQ, the Distressor, and the Moog EQ4M. I just got the Neve Master Bus Processor. Really excited. That's the last big thing on my want list for my studio upgrade of 2025, and I went for it, but I'm not putting it on individual sources, or at least of the drum set. So there's still a couple of other things to process, probably to crush a room mic or the stairwell mic. I'll take the entire drum bus and send it through my chain, including the master bus processor. That'll add a lot of glue, some stereo width, and some harmonic grit, warmth. Very stoked about that. That means that the kick and the snare and whatever else I do beforehand will have gone through the chain twice. So I really want to make sure not to overdo it and just give the impression of polish. Okay, this video is probably pretty long, so I'm going to stop it and I'll be back for part 2. Okay, phase 2. Good morning. I've put some work into sending everything through my chain. I will briefly show you my analog chain that I'm working with. We've got the Neve 8803 Distressors, the Moog EQ4M, and the Portico 2 Master Bus Processor. Very excited about that new piece. And so altogether we have like more of a surgical exact EQ, usually using that before the main character compressors, a little bit of a saturation with the distressors, then some color EQ, some more broad strokes EQ, and then we've got the master bus processor that I didn't use on everything, but will act as a bit of a glue. There's a nice limiter on it and stereo field editor. Yeah, but tried to have pretty minimal settings for that master bus processor at this stage because I'll be using it again on the master, squishing everything again at the end. Let's hear where everything landed. A big part of why I'm doing this is to practice using this gear. I ended up with this drum sound. Which I quite like on its own. I worry a little bit that I've squished it too much, but in general it's controlled. It's got just enough grit to it. I'm really enjoying where that ended up. I'll be honest that the kick does get a little bit lost in the whole mix for me, so I'm gonna worry about trying to bring that out in the next phase with the bass. Nice full round bass sound. This song's not, featuring the bass very hard, so didn't need to be way intense. Sometimes he's hitting that low E. I really want that to pop out. I suppose I do have this pretty much balanced the way that I want, but I will be going through in the next phase with my SSL faders, UF8s, breathing a little bit more life into the volume automation. We have acoustic guitar. Pretty far in the background for that acoustic guitar. Love the way that this sounds. We're getting the clickiness of the percussive element of that acoustic guitar. But I also wanted some of the kind of low end of the acoustic guitar to be right against the bass down there. Because we also have this electric guitar. I wanted it to be in the higher register. of reverb elements in this guitar. There's a room mic, there's the stairwell mic, and so I think I did get it a little washed out by putting it through so much compression with that reverb. If I did it again, I may want to take that reverb down a little bit, but that's part of the magic of analog mixing, that there's no going back unless I want to redo the whole thing. And time constraints in life are a real thing, so we end up with, there's a chance element in mixing that I feel doesn't get talked about so much. Not everything is an intention, just trying as you go to make it sound as best as you can make it sound, and then whatever you end up with, maybe drums that are a teensy bit more squished than you might choose if you could mix infinitely, if you had infinite time, right? Or a guitar that's a little bit more reverbed out than you might want. Next we've got the vocals. I've got this temporary verb off, so we'll just hear the dry. Everything's dry, so this second phase is just mix, my analog mixing chain. Phase 3 is to add any effects that I may want to add. We'll touch everything up a little bit more.
Oh, glorious heat of summer, the quickening in the blood. I buzz like the hive, course with the white water, and I could lay under your brilliance until I am red as the strawberries. Freckles like kisses, awake from my condition. You pulled at my soul from the mouth.
Yeah, so that's pretty nice. Got it nice and crisp. Those are all of the elements of the song. This is where the mix is at. Don't know what else to say. So moving on to part 3. Here we go. Okay, viewers, we are here and finished phase 3 of my mix. I'm really enjoying these phases. First comp, lining up all the parts. Second phase, running it through all the analog gear. This phase, we had effects. So we'll go one by one and see what we added here. First of all, on the drum set, got a low pass filter. So here's without it, and then we add that in. Whew, that gives some nice thump to the kick. Brings it out a little bit. I was really looking for that. It also lets me kind of intensify things whenever the chorus comes around. Yep. All right, so the chorus is right here, and you can see that I've jacked up the low pass filter a little bit and also brought in some phaser. So let's listen first to that low pass come in a little hotter. It's nice, even more thump to the kick. I think about that. I'm using the Moger low pass. It's sort of this like dynamic EQ with a shelf on the lows that kind of pumps. So it's a great way to get some movement down there in the lows. Although I am worried about a little bit of muddiness because I put it on the bass too. Before we get to that though, I'll show you the phaser. Always love phaser on the cymbals, Led Zeppelin style. It's nice. That's just like a little teeny chorus, but I really wanted it to explode, so I did something, on each part there. Let's hear it in the context of the full mix.
You pulled at my soul from the mouth of my den, still naked and basking when the cold
it's a tough balance because you want the energy to stay up as we move into that guitar break, but not quite as much energy as the explosive chorus. Let's check out the bass. We've got here the bass effects. Again, I think it's just low pass. So we'll listen to it without and then with it. A little bit of drive, right, coming from that Moger Foger. I keep it in a little bit throughout the song just to thicken up that lower part. And I'm wondering if I can boost the bass in the master. I know we're still getting some snare verb there. So, yeah, in the context of the full mix.
am red as the strawberries. Freckles like kisses. Awake from my condition. You pull at my soul from the mouth of my den. Still naked and basking when the cold front came in.
Dan, the bass player, is playing some harmonies there on the bass. Campanella. Campanella is the word. So, at least on classical guitar, campanella is when you let notes ring out over one another. And that in itself already gives a lot of weight to the chorus section here. The acoustic guitar, wanted to put some chorus on it. Let's listen to just the chorus effect here. All right, so we've got some drive again from the Moger Foger, this cluster flux, and together. That only comes in for these big parts. So there is the chorus here. I do have it swell through the verse. It looks like just a teensy bit. And then everything, you can see these effects come back in near the end of the song. When things are getting pretty intense. I'm trepidatious about how much saturation I've put on everything throughout this process. Recording in through the Neve preamp, there's a silk mode that adds a little bit of saturation. Then in the mix, I'm usually putting some saturation in on the distressors. And there's no amount knob for that. It's just on or off. You know, it's relatively subtle though. If I'm putting stuff through the master processor, master bus processor, it has more silk. Pro Tools in the past, I've used its heat functionality, which is sort of this like analog board emulation that affects every channel. I've left that off for this. Now, of course, everything is going to go back through the Moog and the master bus processor and the mastering to add even more whatever I want, you know, probably a teensy bit more saturation on that front too. So this doesn't end up being very clean. This song doesn't sound clean. We can listen again here. It's got...
The leaves are changing their colors.
It's got this, you know, a lot of character, a lot of vibiness, which is good. It's not like the last song that I mixed, that prog rock song. There's not a ton of effects going on. All the instruments sound like themselves. I suppose the guitar has a pretty reverbed out sound. So that's where I left it last time. A little bit too out there. I wanted to bring in the dry guitar. Then we've got some mini Foger drive and FX, which I believe is flange and my secret weapon in the studio, the Moger Foger Murph. That thing sounds awesome. So let's listen one by one. Here we've got just the guitar, what I already had. The dry gives it some more crisp intelligibility. There's a little bit of dry in the processed mix already, but giving it a little bit more is good. Then the Mini Foger Drive, I do believe he's using the blues driver, so again, mixing saturations, mixing distortions without and with. Just a little bit more oomph. And then we've got these effects, which really, let's listen to just these effects. Right, there's like these stereo effects happening. They're pretty subtle, although they do come to a head. There's this part, yeah, right there, where in the context of the full mix, you can really hear it poke out, which is pretty cool, I think. And then it fades out for that climactic moment, so the guitar gets clearer and clearer as the vocals kind of sink back into the background. I thought that that was a nice moment. On the vocals, we've just got 2 different reverbs. Got this plate and this hall. Sounds a little bit of a longer tail. For these, I used the Big Sky MX, the Strymon pedal. It has this dual mode that has extremely limited functionality. I was hoping that I could get kind of like matching, phase correlated, similar sounding space, but different modes, you know, the plate, but the plate with a short tail, hall with a long tail, but the decays have to match up, and so I just recorded them separately, and I think it worked out. You can see that I am bringing the verb in and out. One nice place to do this is on this kind of vocal solo moment preceding the chorus.
Echoes like kisses, awake from my condition. You pulled at my soul from the mouth of my den, still naked.
So yeah, everything's coming in there big time on the chorus, including these guitar parts. There was something else with the vocals. Oh yes, I put in a vocal delay as she's kind of bending. So creating an even bigger sense of space there, with some stereo delay. That's great. And then you can see up here that I rode the faders throughout the song to bring stuff in and out as I saw fit. I added some room reverb using Pro Tools Space plugin. That's extremely low in the mix. I think you can see when everything's playing. It is barely there. I don't actually know if it's doing anything, but maybe subconsciously it's giving a little bit more cohesion to the project. I may do something, slap a limiter on it or something, again for the chorus or for those bigger sections to give a little bit more space to everything, but I forgot to do that before I recorded this video. I think that's what I did to everything. Again, a limited number of parts. I did not really do anything to these guitar backup parts. They sounded just fine to me on their own. Relatively easy tune, but the analog process is time consuming. Instead of just slapping a chorus on the acoustic guitar, I had to run the audio out from my interface, plug in some patch cables to that chorus, dial it in, and then record the whole thing. Realize halfway through the recording that it's a little hot, so I'm going to turn it down, start the recording over, this sort of thing. And I do think that digital is more convenient, but I hold faith that all these analog processes add up to a song with more character and more vibe. And another hope is that the clarity that I'm recording everything with these nicer preamps and microphones balances out the sort of like dullness maybe that can happen with too much warmth, right? So much analog processing and everything kind of like gets rounded out. So trying to keep it sharp and crisp through each stage is part of the science, part of the art, I suppose, of this. So we'll see if it all comes together in the master in the next video. Good morning again. All right. Stage 4, mastering. I did a few different versions of this. I wasn't quite happy with various, little things, guitar presence, vocal presence, bass. So had to send this music through my chain multiple times, print it, check it on headphones, on my cell phone, on a little Bluetooth speaker in the car, see if I liked it. I think that I settled on more of a country sound. I sent it to a friend. He mentioned that it's kind of a pop country tune, and that if I turn up the vocals, turn down the guitar, it'll sound more poppy, right, with the lead vocalist sort of shining out front. And so I did that, and I gotta say I liked it. And it's more simple. I was trying to find this balance, this more of a rock balance where electric guitar is up, drums are up, bass is kind of less prevalent, a lot of clickiness in the kick drum and stuff like that. I guess I wasn't going to that extreme, but originally I was carving out some of the 300, 400, what felt like muddiness to me, but I think I ultimately wanted to embrace that, to leave that bassier element in. I cranked up the voice, which feels a lot simpler. It gives you one thing to focus on throughout the song, the singer. The guitar also, I tried turning it up when the singer wasn't singing for it to pop out, but I think with such a reverbed sound, it being down in the mix makes it sound like a little farther away, which maybe adds some sense of space. So I liked it down a little bit for that reason too. But we can get in here and listen to the difference. So you can see I did 4 different versions of the master. So I know I've showed you my chain quite a bit, but I did want to zone in on the 8803 up top. That's what I was carving out some of the bass with, because the EQ4M mastering EQ, the Moog, doesn't really have anything in that 300 range. I was scooping out some of the mids at 650, and you can see that 160, I did end up boosting it once I embraced the bass, but not nearly as much as 40 or the sub down below that. The sub is catching some of the kick, which I really feel in my car speakers. Didn't end up using the 8803, but it's good at carving out stuff that I can't grab with this. This was the first time I was mastering with the MBP, and it was nice. You could see that I was letting the transients through. I had this pumping along to the beat. The song was about at 125 BPM. So that's 2 beats per second. This is pumping at roughly twice, that speed. So, or it releases before the next beat. 1 beat per second. You could see there's the 1 there. Half of that, 0.5. And we want this to be pumping in between those beats. So half of a second. Got the threshold to just barely be licking the reduction, and at the quiet parts it pushes a little bit more during the heavier parts. A low ratio here, a little teeny bit of silk red, although the unit's not on right now. So then I brought up the gain so that it was hitting my interface and Pro Tools right. So lifting up that gain just a little bit, and then bringing the limiter down onto it to find where that would add just a little bit more reduction. Using this unit as it's intended, I believe, pretty light on the master bus. You could see that just all of these parameters could go so much higher or deeper, but I don't know when anybody would ever do that. Maybe that's worth some experimentation. Let's listen to the difference here. First, we'll listen to the main mix with this is the main mix without the master. That's with quite a bit louder there. I will go ahead and take off ozone. That's adding a little bit more thickness, and we'll get to that in a moment. But let's listen to it just with the analog gear. All right, first main mix. Let's start it same place. And with the master. Without just the main mix. With
I buzz like the hive, course with the white water, and I could lay under your brilliance.
yeah, so you can hear it sounds thicker, it hits harder, it's a little louder, so of course we're biased to think that that's just better in general. But beyond that, it's got this this movement. It's more angular, right? It feels a little less natural, but a little bit more heavy, right? It's got more weight to it, which I think increases the emotionality of it. I was just feeling this week that emotions give gravity or weight, to any particular situation or event, and the weightiness here, maybe it works in reverse too. We got to hear that. Then I added on ozone, like I mentioned, but everything with super-y duper light settings. You could see here a 0.4 dB difference to bring out the vocals. Just adding a dB of bass. Tightening up that low focus, just very teensy, adding some punch. The equalizer suggestions that it gave me, I really minimized. Same with another compressor here. Multi-band, right? Different degrees of compression at different frequency bands. Same here with the widening. Now there is a stereo field editor on the MBP. I'm going to go back to the motion sickness camera here. But you can see that I'm only using a little bit of width and depth. You can see that this also has multi-band options, but you can only choose one at a time. So I refrained from that. I just use these as broadband, full universal widening, and then here we're widening different frequency bands. My favorite of these little plugins is Clarity here. Not sure what's going on with it. It's some sort of dynamic EQ, but it's really bringing a little bit more crispness, detail into the recording. The stabilizer does something similar. You can see it's set to country here. I made a decision. The band may not be thrilled about that, but it is what I think sounds best. They described this music as folk rock, folk elements, rock music. Art is subjective, I guess. It's the bottom line there. But anyways, you can see I'm only barely touching this. It was making the cymbals a little harsh if I dug in too much. Dynamic EQ. I didn't put soothe on the whole mix. I used soothe on the vocals, and I really like that dynamic EQ, the Oak Sound plugin, Soothe 2, which does this at another level. Then the maximizer, and here there was that back and forth. So there's this analog unit of measurement, dBu, which equates to voltage inside the unit. Then I'm bringing it into the digital realm, a different unit of measurement, dBFS. Gotta watch out for that sort of conversion. And then after printing it, there's a sort of psychological loudness unit, LUFS. And this is how it's going to appear to the listener through different streaming services. So too loud on the LUFS side, and YouTube and Spotify and whatnot is going to squish it. The louder that you're making it in this stage, the more you're squishing it too. And so the first couple that I printed were very squished, super-duper loud, and lost some dynamics, lost some bass presence. Yeah, really learning a lot about this process here on the mastering side of things, now that I'm having to juggle the analog master bus processor with the in the box. And you do get something from both. So you just heard the difference between the main mix before and after my analog chain. Let's listen with this ozone bypassed. So here's the music without ozone, and here's with. Without. And with. So you can see that, yes, it adds a little bit more volume, but also a little bit of clarity, detail, polish. I just use these words over and over again. Like when I'm teaching music lessons, I use the word practice a zillion times. And whenever I'm wearing my sound engineer hat, I'm using the words polish, detail, crispness, clarity, depth, width, weight, thickness. And I think I gave all of that stuff to this song. Very stoked to be done with it. I believe that's it. Not going to obsess too much because, again, I already spent a lot of time on this, and there's not infinite time in the world, and I lament that. I wish that I could spend forever on each artistic endeavor, maybe clone myself or something, but unfortunately, that technology doesn't exist yet. And so this is what we've got for this song, and next I move on to editing the video, and I hope you enjoy it.